I saw this report come through and they're recommending a reversal of changes to the regulation of our dairy giant known as Fonterra. The Dairy Industry Restructuring Act was passed only into law in July, and our Productivity Commission is saying there needs to be new rules. This was very interesting to me, of course. I flipped it under our editorial producer Tessa's nose and said, I need to talk to somebody about this. And they found us our wonderful next guest, Dairy Link consultant, Earl Rattray, who's been working in the dairy industry for quite some time. Earl, thank you so much for coming on to Sarah's Country. I really do appreciate it, because this is some pretty gutsy things to say, that to fix New Zealand's mediocrity around our productivity, softer regulations will only increase Fonterra's milk powder strategy and stifle development of the industry. I'd love to know your thoughts on this, Earl. Is this fair?
No, it's not. Like most of these things, Sarah, look, there's a pinch of truth in it and a mountain of something else. But look, it's great to be on your show, and I'm very happy to talk about this subject. So the productivity report it's a big read, 200 pages, and it puts its own particular spin on things. And yes, that theme in it that New Zealand has had a volume growth strategy, which has resulted in much more land and dairying and more cows, etc. But it hasn't been delivering value add that in their definition was expected. And look, I'd have to say I've got a different take on that altogether. They begin the report by basically lamenting the fact that there's many New Zealand companies and sectors have actually failed to or struggled to generate significant value growth, catch up with the prosperities of other what they call small advanced countries, but I can confidently say the dairy sector is not one of those sectors that's been failing to catch up. In fact, I think it's well and truly caught up and has been more than pulling its weight. To give you an example of this, 20 years ago, when Fonterra was formed, it was absolutely inconceivable to the average New Zealand dairy farmer that we would be getting about the same milk price, value for our milk, as European or US farmers. And in recent years, we've been routinely achieving that. It's up and down a little bit, but that's about where New Zealand's sitting. So look, as far as a farmer's concerned, we've actually caught up to our Northern Hemisphere colleagues over the last 20 years, and that's not a trivial achievement. At the same time as that, there's now over 50,000 people employed in the dairy sector in New Zealand, tipping over $3.5 billion of wages. But more importantly, and this is probably important, key to the Productivity Commission report, a lot of those employees are highly paid. This is not a low wage sector where you're saving costs on labour. No, the labour is very specialised, and by New Zealand standards and by international standards, it's pretty well paid. So I'm at a little bit of a loss to understand why the dairy industry's taken a bit of a kicking in this report. But when you read through it, you can see that they've got a view that anybody who's producing commodities can't be adding value, and that's not the script anymore.
But I'm of the understanding that Fonterra welcomed the Dairy Industry Restructuring Act and the fact that they wouldn't need to pick up and they could refuse entry onto dairy farmers and actually have some farm assurance standards around their milk. So therefore, is this not a positive into an area of value add?
Well, yes, it is. Look, I'm at a bit of it's a mystery to me why they focused on this this provision of the most recent reform, which did allow Fonterra to decide for itself whether milk it collected added value or not. And if you think about a company like Fonterra or any company in that, its policy settings, its governance will be about doing what's in the interest of the company. And if it's in the interests of Fonterra to collect milk that wanted to return to it after leaving on, why wouldn't they? The fact is that it's without the compulsion to do that, it does put choice in their hands. But I can't see, and there's never been any evidence that that's going to be a barrier to farmers choosing to leave. If a farmer wants to leave Fonterra, they'll leave.
Yeah.
The last thing on their mind will be whether they can come back or not. So there's no evidence that I've seen that is a material issue or barrier to competition, barrier to new players coming in and collecting milk. And look, forming policy, on the basis of hearsay or speculation about that's probably not a good thing. If there was some strong evidence that was the case, then I think I'd sit up and listen. But yes, Fonterra's had in the past, it has been criticised for growing. It's been obliged to collect milk in New Zealand, and it's had to spend an awful lot of capital to process that extra milk. So it hasn't up until now had the choice about whether it expands or not. So I would have thought it was a positive move to give them that choice.
And I suppose the recommendations of a reversal is about new rules believed to stifle much needed competition in the likes of A2 Milk and Synlait with high value based on nutritious claims as well as of course environmental regulations as well. But in the flip side, I mean, there's been a lot of pressure on Fonterra to achieve 15% revenue growth per year to move into high value exports. There's no way our red meat sector would even be able to achieve that.
Well, look, nothing's impossible, of course, but Fonterra itself, I guess, since its formation, one of the things that gets overlooked, all of a sudden after Fonterra was formed, everyone wanted to be a dairy farmer. The South Island milk supply grew from 2 billion litres to 10 billion recently. And look, a lot of capital has had to be deployed in putting in place the processing capacity to deal with that growth in milk. And it is, Fonterra has been helped along the way more recently by the other new entrants that have come in. Open Country and Synlait have taken some of the strain off Fonterra and being able to process that milk. So, but it hasn't stopped them coming in and starting up. But I think, it's fair to say that when you're deploying as much capital to basic processing, basic commodity processing, which is needed to handle that volume of milk, it does cut your opportunities for investing elsewhere. So we've probably got past the point of volume growth in New Zealand, and I think the historical picture is about to change going forward, where New Zealand is now facing low to no growth and possibly a contraction of supply, which means that companies' strategies and their priorities will change. So, hey, I don't think looking back is the right way to assess what the future is going to look like.
But Earl, the reason I want to discuss this is because this doesn't make sense. They talk about the dairy expansion reaching its environmental limits in terms of pressure on water quality, etc. But it's my understanding that DIRA came into play to put a brake on the expansion of dairy and in the form of Fonterra not having to be a monopoly that picks up and rewards bad behaviour.
Certainly, DIRA was designed to foster competition. And that's exactly what it has done. at least 8 independent processors in New Zealand following their own strategy. So DERA has worked exactly as it was designed to do, as far as I can see. So, but more recently, this most recent change, I think, is a tweak recognising that Fonterra's obligation to take back or to accept more milk is probably, the purpose of that has probably run its course. So I thought it was a good move to make that most recent amendment to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the bit I don't understand. And any of our listeners and viewers listening, please get in touch with me to clarify this, because why would our Productivity Commission want to reverse the particular thing that sets us in good stead for the future? Helen Clark, am I correct? Earl didn't realise what would happen when the DIRA was established originally in regards to the expansion of dairy in this country. And so therefore this restructuring was part of this point about creating a sustainable dairy industry in this country. Am I wrong?
Well, look, I think right from when certainly that I can remember in the dairy industry, environmental integrity has almost been, it's been a prerequisite of milk production in New Zealand, and look, it is still evolving. It's adding new dimensions to that every year. I mean, we're now monitoring our carbon footprints, nutrient analysis, but protecting streams has been a feature of the industry for a long time, and we have grown to the point. But now that we're probably are at peak cow numbers, at least for the foreseeable future. The rest of the world's asking where the heck's the milk going to come from. Well, it's unlikely to be coming from New Zealand except for incremental gains, and that is going to provide companies here with an opportunity to change their strategies around how they operate in this sector.
We've got a comment coming here. Paul Harris has said, it's loving to hear about our pay parity with European milk producers. Great referencing, Earl. Brand competition for Fonterra is often coming from product innovation and enhanced pushing of our core food values. There's so much more at play, isn't there?
There is. Look, I think there's clearly a theme running through the Productivity Commission's report that they see value add as producing distinctive and specialised products, and they don't recognise that in fact much of our core manufacturing in New Zealand there is an element of distinctiveness to it. Many of them are very, very specialised products, which is why we can consistently command premiums, for example, for skim milk powder, which is your most basic commodity there is, but we consistently achieve premiums for that out of New Zealand for a whole lot of reasons. Specification reasons is one. You can do more with it. But it's the fact is that the New Zealand dairy industry has built an incredibly strong base around basic manufacturing, which has allowed multiple other things to happen. And every new entrant that's come into New Zealand or has started up a process, they've all put up powder dryers. And whole milk powder's got there's a sense that it's something that we shouldn't be doing to the extent that we are, but it's enabled fantastic value creation in the New Zealand dairy industry. It's basically allowed us to utilise nature's greatest gift to New Zealand, and that's seasonal pasture production. And if matching dairy cows' biological cycle with seasonal pasture production, it does create a huge amount of milk in a very, very short period of time. And 4 months of the year, we produce 10 billion litres of milk. Now, there is no way that milk can be valorised in anything other in the short term than a basic powder product that takes the water out of it and basically stores it, or variations of that, butter and skim milk powder or cheese, for example. But being able to process that amount of milk in a very, very short period of time is the fundamental value pillar of the New Zealand dairy industry. And if we depart from that, start to fight nature on the farm, for example, by producing milk out of season, ultimately we will be the losers for that. We will lose industry competitiveness. Underneath all that, though, it's clear that while New Zealand's milk production, 10 months to October this year, is up about 1%, actually commodity manufacturing is down slightly. Whole milk powder about 1.5%, skim and butter much more, and that just shows that gradually more of New Zealand's milk is being committed to what I think the Productivity Commission would probably identify as value add products. And look, it's not well known, but anyone can pick up, for example, a Fonterra annual report, and they can see there's $6 billion of food service and consumer business in that company. You mentioned A2, which is a remarkable story of utilising powders essentially, but a specialist powder, and they've created a market niche for that. And have been doing very, very well up until recently. As you said, Synlait have been doing tremendously well in branding what's otherwise basic powder and adding features to it that give it a point of difference. I haven't seen anything that's constraining competition and innovation in the New Zealand dairy industry for a very, very long time, since the statutory single seller was removed. I think the dairy industry is delivering exactly what it was reformed in the early 2000s and set up to do.
It was just like a little bone with a dog. I knew it was inside you, Earl. And we're talking tonight about being passionate about the industry. Oh, Earl, it's been an absolute privilege to have you on Sarah's Country. And of course, we're talking about the Productivity Commission wanting to reverse the changes on the regulatory dairy giant, regulations around the dairy giant Fonterra.
This is Sarah's Country.